Okay. Hello and welcome everyone. We're going to be starting in just a few minutes. So if you'd like to post a greeting in the chat and let us know where you're joining from, that would be wonderful. So exciting to see everyone. And I'd just like to let you know that closed caption has been enabled. So if you'd like to turn on that feature, you can go down to more and turn that on. And also a quick note to let you know that everyone has been muted upon entry to help us with our sound control. But we are going to be monitoring the chat, and we're also going to have a Q&A open conversation a little bit later. So if you have questions that come up, feel free to post those in the chat as we're moving along, and we'll circle back to those questions. And also, we're posting in the chat our ARTEFFECT Code of Conduct, and that's just for your reference as a reminder that we're gathering today in a collegial space that is respectful of our varying and diverse perspectives. And also to let you know that this meeting is being recorded. All right, so I think as people are posting greetings, it's so wonderful to see everyone from across the nation. We can go ahead and get started. So hello again, I'm Tony Guglielmo, Director of ARTEFFECT, and I'm delighted to see so many educators in this session. And I'd like to begin with some quick introductions. So I'm joined today by other members of the ARTEFFECT team, and I'd like to quickly introduce my teammates. Sarah Hoffrick, who is Managing Director of the Lowell-Milken Family Foundation. Sarah, would you like to say hello?
Yes, thanks, Tony. Hi, everyone. As Tony mentioned, I am the Managing Director for Programs and Partnerships at the Lowell-Milken Family Foundation, and I've had the pleasure of working with Tony for many years now, and I'm so excited to be part of this inaugural professional development session. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. And also we have Michael Kay, who's Digital Media Editor with the Lowell-Milken Family Foundation.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see familiar faces and not at the first public professional development session for this new program.
Thank you, Michael. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce Karen Wilterding. Karen is the Online Communications Director at the Lowell-Milken Center in Fort Scott, Kansas. Karen, would you like to unmute and say a quick hello?
Yes, hi. Welcome, everybody. I saw a lot of familiar faces and names come through the chat room, so it's good to see everybody. Welcome.
Great, thank you for joining us. And then we have a few people working behind the scenes supporting this effort today. And I'd also just like to say how wonderful it is to see so many of our ARTEFFECT ambassadors on the call. So welcome. Our ARTEFFECT ambassadors are educators working in the K-12 sector across the nation and Canada in a year-long online fellowship to bring the unsung heroes into their classrooms and communities through the visual arts. So we're excited to especially see you all here today. So I just wanted to take a few moments to give a quick overview of ARTEFFECT for those of you that are joining us for the first time and new to this program. And just very quick overview of ARTEFFECT is an initiative that invites educators and their students to explore the diverse stories of unsung heroes and their invaluable lessons as role models in the visual arts. And it's an expanding initiative that includes an annual competition, exhibitions, and professional development. The annual competition is open to middle and high school students, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about that later in our program. And the exhibitions and professional development is is what we're joining here today. And on the next slide, I just wanted to talk quickly about the exhibitions, which are very exciting. So here's an image of our location at the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes in Fort Scott, Kansas, where Karen is. And as many of you know, teachers, through the efforts of the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes, or LMC, in Fort Scott, Kansas, teachers engage with their students in project-based learning to discover the untold stories of the unsung heroes. And the other image is the Milken Center for Advancing the American Dream, which is currently under development and planned to be opening in winter of 2024. And I'm very excited to let you know that we're working on an exhibit gallery space in that location, focused on ARTEFFECT and the unsung heroes, and an opportunity for students to display their artworks in that location right in Washington, D.C. So you'll be hearing more about those developments as that project unfolds. And on the next slide, just a beginning, because I know we've been saying unsung heroes, and most of us know that term, but I just wanted to define it for us so that we're all on the same page. So the LMC Unsung Heroes are individuals that are largely unrecognized for their contributions, who took extraordinary actions to improve the lives of others and made a positive and profound impact on the course of history. And these are inspiring stories that demonstrate the power of one person to make a positive change, and to really change the course of history, to make a change in society, and to make a meaningful impact in the lives of others. So with that, what we're going to be focusing on today is character and value traits as expressed through these individuals. And our instructor, Dr. Veronica Alvarez, who is our guest instructor, will be guiding us through a visual art lesson plan that presents specifically how students might practice empathy in connecting with these stories of individuals from history, and historical empathy. And she will take us through like how engaging in empathy in the art making process is an important step for creative interpretation, and important in helping students to bring depth to the artworks, and also to better understand the value of the values and the character traits that are represented by these individuals as role models. So Dr. Alvarez has assigned a pre-reading, and in case you missed that, we're going to post the link in the chat, which you can come back to. It's a reading on empathy. And she's also prepared a lesson plan. And so that is being posted in the chat. You'll get a link to that also as well at the end of our session in a follow-up email. But I invite you to download that lesson plan right now if you can. Keep it on your desktop or print it out quickly. And it's something that you might want to follow through as she goes through the lesson today. And so now I'd like to introduce Dr. Veronica Alvarez, who's an art historian, an art educator, an administrator. She's currently executive director of the Community Arts Partnership at Cal Arts, where she works to provide training through to K-12 teachers. And she is an expert in bridging the language arts and the visual arts. And Veronica has been a colleague with ARTEFFECT for many years. So I'm going to turn the program over to Veronica to take it away and share a little bit more about her background. Veronica.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I see from all over the country and even internationally. I saw somebody from Canada as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. As Tony mentioned, I'm going to be walking through the lesson, an aspect of the lesson that uses characters and values as shown in the LMC's heroic traits and actions. So we're going to talk about, and hopefully it's going to be very interactive and engaging. And so make sure you use your reaction buttons, put questions in the chat. I do have, we said a Q&A session formally at the end, but if you have an immediate question, you can obviously ask. And then I'm going to be asking for participant engagement throughout. And then there'll be a little bit of kind of a format of me presenting about historical empathy, but we're going to look at We're going to tap into students, what I would talk about into your background knowledge with generating a word cloud on what are character and values. Then we're going to look at historical empathy, defining it. How has the arts particularly been helpful in building that skill set, right? Like, you know, given what's going on in the world, I think all of us building our skill set in terms of empathy. But again, I'm just going to show how art is particularly useful for building that skill set. Then we're going to do how portraits tell a story. We're going to have an interactive discussion about that using, if you want to unmute yourself and or using the chat feature. And then we're going to do an art activity, a blind contour drawing. So if you want to have paper and pencil readily available for that portion, I would appreciate that. And then I'm going to talk through some extensions and at the very end show how it connects to multiple standards, and depending on the grades that you teach, the different standards you might want to address. Okay, and so we'll be able to scaffold based on your grade level. So the next slide. We're going to start. So I'd love for you to respond. So if you want to just get your cameras, and you could either go directly to the site on the link there, or you could take your phone and take a picture of a QR code. And I would like for you to respond what values and character traits are important for a person to have? And this will allow us to generate a word cloud collectively. I'll give you all a moment. Honor, respect, integrity. Oh, empathy. Was that based on what I just said? Empathy is the biggest word classified. Kindness, integrity. Oh, I love that somebody used love as part of an important character trait for somebody to have. Courage, I saw in the chat. Okay. I love that we're collectively learning and seeing who's in the room. Okay, so the big ones that really come out are empathy, kindness, honesty, resilience, openness, perseverance.
Compassion.
Compassion. These are great. I'm going to take. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to do the very same thing with the next. What values and character traits are important for a hero to have? Or what would would they be different? Are they the same? Oh, bravery. Okay, bravery was the ones. And I saw leadership in the chat. Okay, so far we're getting selflessness. Bravery, it seems to be courage. Confidence. Okay, so my main area of expertise is actually language and language acquisition and using art for language acquisition. So I love using art for this because, as you can see, there's so many opportunities for defining words, for looking at synonyms. What is, bravery, courage, they're different words, but could be synonymous. And what are those distinctions, and having those kinds of conversations. Okay, so based on what we just looked at, it seems for a person to have empathy, kindness, and honesty. And then right now, when we're looking at this one, it seems that bravery, courage, and selflessness were kind of the ones that really drew people forth, or that was generated the highest in the word cloud, the highest responses. So it's interesting. So then I would have students kind of do a compare and contrast chart of why, what is the difference, and really engaging into that discussion. But as we move on to the next slide, I want to share with you some works of art that have been winners of the ARTEFFECT project. So this is by Chloe Kim, a 10th grader at Overlake School in Redmond, Washington. How did she illustrate character and values in this work of art, in her Unsung Hero? Or what character and traits values are shown in this work of art? Love. Oh, we didn't have love. Or it did have love in the first one, love, kindness, okay, protection. So you're seeing her actions as being protective. We saw a lot of that. Okay, bravery. And that was something that we said a hero should have, right? Bravery was one of the biggest words on our word cloud. Caring, strength. So, and then like this idea of generating, comparing the hero, the word clouds that we intuitively thought as heroic versus what one of the students decided was heroic. Determination. She looks very determined. Oh, willingness to put oneself at risk. Great. We'll go to the next slide. How about this one? This might be a little bit more challenging. What heroic traits or actions could you see in this work of art? Because it's not as, in the other work of art that we saw, you could tell she was protecting children, physically protecting, holding them. But this one is determined, selflessness, focus. Oh, I love that. The focus, was that a pun intended? Focusing on the eyes, focus, seriousness, mindful. Did we think of mindful or introspective as heroic traits? Like those didn't come up in the word cloud, but this is what we're talking about with this work of art that's fascinating. Introspective. Analytical. Okay, so Megan, we might not have thought of as a heroic trait as being analytical, but this idea of analyzing and kind of the heroes that are able to analyze a situation and act upon it, that could be very heroic. And I like the good fashion sense. That's awesome. Okay, the next slide. As you can see, from the two heroes that we just saw that basically advocated for children, I didn't mention their stories, but the one that we just saw, if you want to go back to the other side, this was Louis Hine. He was a photographer that through his documentarian portraits of children, child laborers in particular, he was able to change child labor laws because he went documenting the different industries that were employing children. And so through his efforts, he was able to change child labor laws. But as you can see here, the two ones we saw advocated for children, but there are at least 128 other heroes that changed the world through different ways, through science, technology, discoveries in medicine, engineering, math, and so forth. So if we go to the next slide, and they do so demonstrating some of LMC's heroic traits, and the traits like compassion, conscience, courage, generosity, humility, perseverance, and then the actions that they took. Right? They challenged the status quo, they faced prejudice and acted upon it, or they made a difference in the world. So this is kind of the lesson that's going to address some of these through the lens of empathy. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to focus on empathy because it encompasses some of the others like compassion, consciousness, selflessness that some of you have already talked about or brought forth. So to share the definition, empathy is a stimulated emotional state that relies on the ability to perceive, understand, and care about the experiences or perspectives of another person or animal. I added the animal myself just in full transparency because I have a friend that's doing a lot of work in the LA Zoo, actually. And what he's showing is that if caring for animals builds human empathy, and we're able to empathize through the care of animals. But as I mentioned, we're going to focus on art. And I wanted to look at this if we go to the next slide, because recent research has demonstrated that looking at and responding to art builds historical empathy. So what is historical empathy? It's the ability to understand and associate what life was like for people who lived in a different time and place. Are you all familiar with this work of art? You could do thumbs up, thumbs down. And your reactions, there's a reaction of a little happy face. And if you hit the arrow, you could see, yes, Melissa, do you want to share anything that you know? Or yes, it's about the Great Depression, Mrs. Lewis is saying. This is a photograph by Dorothea Lange that documented, that's a word I had trouble saying earlier, that documented, yes, Megan, it was a works progress administration piece. The government, the US government had sent Dorothea Lange out to document the Great Depression. And Dorothea Lange found this woman, her name is Florence Owens, out, her family's vehicle had broken down. And they were pea pickers in California, and she was just off to the side. And so Dorothea Lange saw her on the side and was really drawn to her. And so she took her picture. And because of this image, the action that happened is that the US government did send a lot of food to the area. However, her family didn't benefit from it because they had already moved on. But this is just an example of how looking at artwork could build students' empathy by having people know and relate to the stories of others. And this recent research has shown that, if we go to the next slide, Crystal Bridges Museum conducted a survey in 2013, and it's basically the gold standard of research because they had the perfect control group. There hadn't been a museum. It's in Bentonville, Arkansas, and none of the kids around the museum for hundreds of miles, I don't know hundreds, but several hundred miles, they didn't have museums, an art museum like Crystal Bridges. So what they were able to do is that right when the museum opened, they hired the University of Arkansas to conduct a really big evaluation of the students that visited the museum and those that hadn't yet. So it's a huge study, almost 11,000 students, almost 489 teachers, and 123 schools. And what they found is that, if we go to the next slide, that going to the museum and then having a follow-up visit, like students several months later, they went back to talk to the students. They found that 88% of the students who, for example, saw this painting at the camp, Spinning Yarns in Whitling, depicts abolitionists that were trying to undermine the sugar industry. And so they were basically going against the idea of enslaved people. So they were abolitionists fighting for enslavement of people. Another example, if we go to the next slide, similarly, 82% of the students who saw Norman Rockwell's Rosie the Riveter could recall that the painting emphasizes the importance of women entering the workforce. So students were able to engage in conversations and imagine what it might have been like for women to enter the workforce for the first time and having that responsibility, as men were all fighting in World War II, having the responsibility of working and caring for children. So by hearing these stories, children were able to have historical empathy for women entering the workforce. So the next slide shows the study. It's a really great study because, again, coming from a museum background before CalArts, it really demonstrated that going and discussing and looking at works of art increased critical thinking, tolerance, and interest in art museums. But as I mentioned, the second column will show that it really increased students' historical empathy. And by that, they particularly asked students, what was life for people 100 years ago? And the students were able to respond with what they were thinking and able to articulate the fact that people have different opinions about the same thing. So using this research, we're going to do some exercises, activities using works of art to build historical empathy or build our historical empathy skills. Because for LMC, it's important to view and place heroes in their historical context. I think it's really important to be able to think about and judge people in the time that they're living in and their time and place, and how that might have influenced their actions, or how that might have made their actions even more heroic when we realize that people from a long time ago didn't have the resources, the knowledge, or even the ability to do some of the things that we're able to do so now. Yes, Summer, I think somebody just put the link of that study in the chat. So I think by looking at these heroes through the historical lens and building on empathy, it helps us appreciate their heroic actions even more. Okay? Any questions on the study or how we're doing this? Okay, so through the next slide, we're going to go through in first activity. So hearing someone's story as shown from the two examples we just looked at from Crystal Bridges helps build empathy. So we're going to look at this woman's story through a group discussion. And so for this, I'm going to put some questions along the on the slide, and feel free to unmute yourself and or respond in the chat. Okay. So what can we tell about the main female figure in the work of art? So the woman right in the center that's dressed. Thank you, Peter. She's wealthy. Debbie, why do you think that, what do you see that makes you think she's wealthy?
The way she's dressed is so different from the others in the picture.
Okay, she's wealthy, she's privileged, she has a very nice, and you could see through the texture, right? It's made from fine. Oh, Tony, why do you think she looks patriotic?
Oh, she is wearing red, white, and blue.
She is. Okay. So, you know, we have to think, is that intentional? Very probably on the artist's part. She's rebelling against the status quo. She's determined, Leslie. Okay, so we're looking at both what she's wearing to demonstrate that she comes from privilege and wealth, but now we're also looking at her actions. She looks determined. Okay, and so that goes to our next question. What does body language and expression communicate about her? Oh, Megan, why do you think she's a leader? Okay, because all the 3 or 4 figures are turned toward her. That's great, the body language. The focal point. Oh, the women are being more active than passive, and her body is turned to us. Really great observations. You know, somebody mentioned she's bigger than the other characters. They're all turned toward her. The artist made sure in terms of composition to put the other figures around her. And there's a small flame in the wheat field. And it looks like she's setting a fire. She's not afraid of the man looking right at him while doing it. Okay, so that gives us some of her actions and her traits. So that leads us to the next question. Some of you are already commenting. She's brave. She's determined. She's not afraid of the man. She's taking charge. Okay, so it's interesting because bravery was one of the key words when we did the word cloud that came forth. And now you're looking at an image that is showing her bravery, her leadership. Great, right? To be a hero, you have to lead. Sometimes it's against the status quo. Sometimes it's leading in a new effort that had never been discovered because you're innovative, and she has a vision. And then finally, with the last question, and some of you already started talking about that. The quickness in responses is also a sign of fear amidst the bravery, Debbie. That's so interesting to think about, that there's like, sometimes to be brave, you have to hold on a little bit to that fear. So what else is included in the artwork? Describe the setting, the objects. She's taking action against the enemy. Oh, Mrs. Lewis, do you want to elaborate on that? Why do you think she's...
Well, looking at the picture, I mean, I infer that it's like in the earlier times in America, like during maybe the American Revolution with the British people and all of that. And it seems like that she's gathered her family and she's intentionally burning the wheat that's right there, obviously, to like say, hey, you may come against us, but you're not getting what you want, in a sense. So yeah, that's what I infer, that's what's happening, because it is during that historical era, during that time.
Wow. Okay. I love your inferences. And Miss Lewis, if you saw what we just did, just to like make it very transparent, that's why I love doing these activities. Instead, I could have just sat here and told you that that is what is happening. But Mrs. Lewis, you just articulated, you just made these inferences and supported your inferences with visual evidence within the work of art. So the fact that you were able to get so much information based on our discussion, perhaps based on other people's observations and building on their knowledge, you all collectively came up with this, basically what is exactly happening. She was trying to stop, she's orchestrating an escape. And then Catherine, the man looks like he's pointing to a house up on the hill. Do you all see that? The house on the hill. And that is exactly what's happening. If we go on to the next slide, Mrs. Lewis, you basically articulated this. This is Mrs. Schuyler burning her wheat fields on the approach of the British. So you were absolutely right. It was during the Revolution. And you looked at the fact that they were dressed differently than we are today to let us know that it is from a different time period. And the man pointed to the house. So Mrs. Schuyler's husband was off fighting in the American Revolution and the British were coming. So as an act of bravery, she did burn the wheat fields so that, and some of you commented on that it looked deliberate and so forth. She burned the wheat fields so that the British wouldn't have access to those resources. So again, this kind of patriotic, and somebody said that in the beginning, that she looked patriotic, and it's a patriotic effort that she was engaging in through this painting. We get this story. So I don't know if you all know, Anastasia, did I say your name, Anastasia, correctly? Why do you think she owned enslaved people?
I'm not sure if she's a slave owner or not. I initially thought maybe the boy was hiding from the boy is on his knees giving her the candle and was hiding, and the man was pointing to the guys with on the horses with guns, it seems to me, at the other end of the field. But now that you said that they were fighting against the British, but maybe she was a slave owner and that's one of her slaves.
Yeah, so I did do research on this because originally I did have actually a discussion with somebody at the museum this is at LACMA, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, that they're like, no, they didn't own people, but they did, because they were from New York. So this is an event happening in New York. And through some research, we found that the Schuylers did own several slaves. So it is kind of what Tony said in the beginning, like this idea of some people are complicated, but yeah, they did own several people. And so at this time period when Emmanuel Lutz was putting this painting together, or drawing this, painting this, the idea of enslaved people was obviously very controversial. And the Civil War happened shortly after this. And then Mrs. Schuyler, you might know through her daughter. Her daughter married Alexander Hamilton. So if you've seen the play Alexander Hamilton, this is the Schuyler's daughter married into that family. So this is, and then what I was saying, this is a version of her life that was told by one of her daughters when they were gathering brave women from the Revolutionary War. Yes, Leslie, I think we're going to share the PowerPoint, right, Tony? Or yeah, I'd be happy to share it.
Yes.
Okay. So moving on, so we're gonna move on to the next activity. Yes, Lutz also painted Washington crossing the Delaware. So Lutz was a German artist and he wanted to show his patriotism by making several images of patriotic Americans. And this is one of them. Not as famous as Washington crossing the Delaware, but it is one. So now what we're going to do is, if you want to take out a pen and pencil, paper and pencil, or a pen and paper, whatever writing implement you would like, and a piece of paper, we're going to do a blind contour drawing. So what this is going to be is you're going to choose a place to start on the image of the woman. So are you going to start at her elbow? Are you going to start at the top of her hat? Or are you going to start right at the tip of her nose? Whatever you like. And then for the next 2 to 3 minutes, I'd like for you to just look at her and her image and trace the outline as you go around without taking your eyes off of her. So you're just going to trace on your paper. So just remember, it's not going to look realistic, and it's not going to, it's not meant to be realistic, because you're just going to be focusing on the image, because spending time and seeing a person also helps build empathy. Okay, so I'll be quiet. Okay. Okay, are we wrapping up? Thank you. So I just love for you, or anybody that would like to share either in the chat or unmute yourself, what that process was like for you. Or if you want to share the image on the camera, you just have to make sure you put it close to the camera. Would anyone like to share the blank contour drawing? Oh, Catherine, I could see yours since you did it with black ink or something. It looks, oh, wow. And Sue? Constantinos? Did I say your name right? Thank you for sharing. Brad. Melissa. Oh, That's awesome. Wow. I'm slowly going through. Thank you for sharing, Leslie and Rena. Thank you. Would anyone like to share what our process was like?
I really liked I'm an art teacher, so I teach
Okay.
line contour drawing all the time. But I really like that you went from questioning and looking to it to actually quieting us down and making us focus internally in a way, to really look at the image much closer at that point.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I did deliberately scaffold it that way. Wow, somebody so fast. You're so tech savvy. You shared an image on the chat. It's a little disorienting, a little brave, and kind of freeing. Wonderful. Oh, and it's a wonderful exercise of looking at things closely. Okay, and Leslie, you found yourself looking at more detail. Great. Those are part of the reasons, or definitely the reasons I wanted to do something like this, to notice details, to stop her body, her hands. Okay. Oh, and the music. It's always important about music. Oh, and then, I haven't noticed her ring either, Joanna. Wow. Okay. So if we go to the next slide, as what you all just articulated so wonderfully right now, art can be a very powerful way for us to gain a better understanding of human emotions and stories. It gives us a unique lens to look at artists' inner worlds. It trains our brains to slow down. Somebody said it made you slow down and think more rationally instead of emotionally. It restores our capacity to connect with others. And art plays a unique role in reestablishing humanity in this tech-dominated world. As ironically, we're all together because of tech, because of Zoom, right? But in a way, I love how Zoom is connecting us. But so using their little icon in the reaction, if you hit the next, using the thumbs up or thumbs down, do you agree with this statement? Why or why not? Karen agrees. And Sue, Leslie, and Melissa. Why or why not? I mean, some of you already said that it forced you to slow down. Did knowing her story, what if I hadn't told you her story? Would that have made you connect more or less with her? Or did you need her story in order to make that empathetic connection, historical empathetic connection with her?
I wonder if you had displayed that without the title, because the title said so much. How would we have reacted to it?
Okay, some folks are saying they needed to know the story. It provides another way of seeing. It creates historical empathy. I mean, that is what the neuroscientist Terry Wu says, that it's very powerful to know people's story. There's a museum called the Empathy Museum. It's a traveling exhibition in a way. It has a shoebox, and it's traditionally more, instead of historical empathy, just being empathetic. What it does is it's a shoebox, and you go in and you take somebody's shoes. Literally, you kind of borrow their shoes, almost like going to the library and borrowing a book. And then they make you walk in their shoes for a mile as you listen to their story on headphones. So this idea of connecting with people through story and storytelling, and that is what we're looking at, is a narrative work of art, a work of art that tells a story. Art is like another language. It speaks to people. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing.
Can I also add something? I think also like it's important to just name like the times, like I think it's called a zeitgeist or something, to name that time period. During the Revolutionary War or wartime, women traditionally were like nurses taking care of the soldiers. But I think this picture depicts and it stamps that, hey, women were out on the battlefield in their own way, taking a stand for women rights. They said that, hey, women can't go to war, women can't do that. But it's like she intentionally showed the world in this piece of art that, like, hey, we can be on the field and be a nurse. So I think it's important to name and to stamp that women are capable of doing more than just like the house things.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mrs. Lewis. And then I see that Melissa says you do VTS and allows students to create their own stories. Yeah, so I think it's really important to, I do like the VTS strategy for that. It's a great way to facilitate and have discussion. Okay, now we're going to look at some extension activities to further our capacity to build or empathize. And these are some suggestions that I have, and I'm sure some of you have others. And if you want to share those, please do so. But yeah, I don't think we'll have time, but if you wanted to do this on the back of your paper, we could quickly do an I am poem. Some things that I've done is, choose one of the figures in this photograph, and from that person's perspective, write an I am poem using the following prompts. I am, I see, I hear, I feel, I pretend, I wonder, I want, I say, I hope, I dream. Oh, maybe we could do a collaborative poem. If you want, somebody could just choose one of those and in the chat, share, looking at this photograph, sharing from maybe let's look at the main figure as well. Choose one sentence and let's do a collaborative poem in the chat. Use one of those prompts. And the reason that I like to do this also is for English learners. I myself am an English learner, and English isn't my first language. And when somebody would say like beginning, like, let's write a poem, my heart would just drop because, poetry seems to be the most exclusive way to use language. And but with these prompts, it allows English learners to be able to participate in some kind of activity like this. So let's see what you're saying. I dream of a better life for my children. I see dust all around. I want to provide for my family. Because she's trying to do this middle passage with the seventh grader. Yeah, the importance of when to use them. I want a better life for my children. I dream for comfort and love for all children. I wonder if things will ever get better. I feel hungry. Yeah, that one's really powerful because, as I mentioned, like historically, knowing the context of this, her family was hungry, and by the time that food was transported to where she was, her family had already moved on. I say everything will be okay. I'm scared. I see no futures here for your tears alone. I pretend to be full. I pretend to be strong for my kids. Wow, I'm scared. I wonder how long. Thank you. I dream of a better life. Thank you so much for that. So as you could see, this is a great activity, again, to build empathy, like literally walking in someone's shoes. I dream that we will live in our own home. I want my life back. Yeah, because the depression didn't happen that long ago. I say it's okay. Yeah, when we think, and so it's something really powerful for students to really be able to imagine, like, yeah, what life was like then. Okay, next slide. And And then depending on your learning objectives and your concepts or the standards that you want to address, you could do literally the same activity if you want to hit the button to show the same exact questions that we use with the Mrs. Schuyler painting, but with another work of art. For example, I chose this to illustrate courage and perseverance. Using the candle at night, it really shows. And we had that as part of our word cloud, the idea of perseverance. He's using this candle really late at night. And as we talked about in the beginning, you're able to really place people in their historical context. Because at that time, technology or even questioning this idea of using a globe and questioning the fact that the world was round, that was very brave at that time. People were literally imprisoned for pointing out that the world was round, or the fact that the earth revolved around the sun. So this idea of astronomer and his job as an astronomer was very innovative, and it was brave for his time period. So the next few slides we're going to look at, we'll just go through the lesson plan if you were able to link to it. And then the next few slides would just show some prompts and some ideas of how you could then have students think about how they're going to depict their unsung hero. So there's journal exercises. You could have, I'm sorry, could you go back really quick? Looking at what are the traits that they want to illustrate based on learning about their story, what extraordinary actions do they want to show and demonstrate? How is the individual's actions influenced by the time and place they lived? We just looked at an astronomer from the 1600s. How is that a brave thing to do, or how did that become heroic? And then I also think it's really important to have students critically analyze the research materials that are used. Think about who told the story. We talked about knowing stories. Okay, well, who's telling that story? From what perspective? What might be the motivation for telling that story? Next slide. And then again, that sketching exercise, similar to what we did with the blank card to drawing, you could have students really sketch out their composition, what they want to do. And I love that when we looked at Mrs. Schuyler, you noticed that the artist put all of these people around her. We said it's like a narrative work of art, a works of art that tells a story. How did we know she was a main story? She was dressed in very nice materials, and then all of the other characters were kind of supplementary to her. And then have students think about will that action be illustrated? How will you communicate about their values and their character traits? And then really having students go through the process of what is the best media to tell their story. Is it 2D? Is it 3D? What is the best way to communicate the heroic actions that their unsung hero is showing? Oh, great. I'm glad that you find it helpful, Leslie. Yeah, and then tell students, and I think that's what I love about art, and what I think it's so interesting. Sometimes, we always have students do a first draft, right? When they're writing something, but we don't do that with art. Like, no, like this will be the draft part. Like, hey, you notice her pointing, you said she looked determined. Her arm was very clearly burning the wheat fields, going back to the Mrs. Schuyler. Have students, what would have been different if her arm was placed a little lower? It might have showed that she has some hesitancy. So really having students be very deliberate and critically analyze how their choices will influence what they're communicating with their works of art is very powerful. Next slide. So as can be seen in the next few slides, we're going to look at just different standards that just this activity we did with will help, depending on what subject area you teach, what grade level. I've done the I Am poem with very young kids. I might limit the number of prompts I give, but I've done it with very young kids. I've done it with older students. So determining your student body, as you could see, These are the ELA standards. And as Mrs. Lewis so brilliantly demonstrated, we read closely and determined what the text artwork says, and we made inferences from it, and we cited evidence within the painting to support our conclusions. So you could do ELA standards. Next slide could be the history standards, social studies, and in particular, I want to, students understand the importance of individual action and character, right? That's a standard, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at characters and actions and values from long ago and how the recent past have made a difference in others' lives. And if you look at the very bottom, you'll see why. Somebody pointed out in the chat about the choice of artwork to start this discussion is very important. And again, there's so much artwork out there, and I'm sure you could find something that will fit to what you want. But so I chose Mrs. Schuyler because I saw this standard, identified the different roles of women played in the revolution, and Mrs. Schuyler was one of those. And then, as I've already mentioned with the next slide, English language development, we exchange information and ideas through oral collaboration conversations. Obviously, if we were in a classroom, we would have done that a little bit more, but we interacted with others in written English through the chat, through whatever means. So, and then the I am poem, as I mentioned, is really helpful for English learners to give sentence starters so that they're able to participate in their own comfort level. And then obviously the very last one is the VAPA standards. Of course, because they're creating works of art. So, and if you see in the prompts, as part of the artifacts, they'll be asked to write an artist statement and so forth. So that'll be really helpful with some of these, to connect some of these and comparing one interpretation of art with others. Okay.
Thank you so much. First off, I would like to say, Veronica, thank you so very much for this not transactional setting, but a transformative setting for us to come together as a diverse group of people and to deep dive and show us how to deep dive into various pieces of art so that we can share our humanity together as colleagues, and also to transfer this over with our students. I think historically speaking, art schooling has been so transactional, like, hey, this is your objective, do this, and you give me this. But I hear and I see through this program that the tides are turning to like really, really melt and bring humanity together in an empathetic way. And like you did a great job with that, like with like just showing and modeling that for us. And I think more than ever in this time and in this culture of what's happening in the world, us all coming together on the common ground and sharing our experiences through art is a really beautiful thing. And I just want to say thank you, because this is what life is about. Just living the learning and being authentic in this work. I appreciate you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. You literally made my whole week. It is recorded. I'm going to listen to this on loop for a long time. Thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. I appreciate you.
All right, well, we just have a few more minutes. So I wanted to remind everyone on the next couple of slides, you're going to be seeing a lot of information about the competition because we are promoting that far and wide. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that the competition officially opened November 1st. And this year we extend the deadline for the competition to May 1st to provide extra time if you're working in that second semester and your students feel inclined to enter the competition. So we have until May 1st, and there's prizes. There's the Spotlight Heroes. We just sent out an email about that. Those are heroes, unsung heroes whose stories that we wanted to especially profile this year. So there's some information about that you'll be getting in the emails. And on the next slide is just our, the steps for that when you're ready. Because some of you have been reaching out to me about the unsung heroes that you're working with in your community and your school. And so I appreciate your patience in going to get back to a few of you, Jill, and also Kimberly, and I think it was Melvita asked me. So if, we can have these dialogues about the unsung heroes, and but there is that list that you can work from when you're working on your projects. And then if you decide to go into the competition, there's an impact statement, but of course you can do that in your lesson just as well. And then we've opened the online portal for the competition. So that is all information coming your way. And then I don't know what I have on the next slide. Oh yeah, I wanted to just show you, because I know that some of you are looking at some of these artworks. So you've seen these before. These are the student artworks from our last year's competition that are just amazing. So in the next two slides, we have examples that I just wanted to flash for you. And I think that's it actually. So what is on the next slide? Oh, yes. Okay, so our upcoming online modules. So I actually see that Brad Leduc is on the call. So he is coming up next for our program, and Brad is going to be leading a session on storytelling through art on December 13th from 4 to 5:15. So Brad, please unmute, and now is your chance to give us the preview for your session.
All right. That was a wonderful session, Veronica. Holy smokes. Thank you so much. So yeah, looking forward to December 13th, if you can make it. Storytelling through art, where we'll investigate some different ways to incorporate that into the classroom. And we're going to do a couple activities that allow you as a teacher to maybe bring some things back to your classroom to participate with your students, as far as engaging them, looking at some of the previous winning works, and then kind of looking and thinking about where they want to go with their own work. So looking forward to it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Brad has been a long time art educator associated with ARTEFFECT since its inception, and master art teacher. So we're very much looking forward to his lesson. And also, we were Brad and I were talking about this with a couple of others in terms of the emphasis for his lesson plan. And I think it's going to be very exciting, because we wanted to offer you some ways to explore how students can come into a story that are sort of non-traditional ways of entering a story, not just, just coming in from different moments in a story or different instances. So that is coming up, and then we are going to have an open house for the competition January 17th, and then 2 other modules in the new year that are listed here. And also for the ambassadors, we're going to have ambassadors only event open house just to drop in for your capstones on November 29th. So you should all have an invitation for that. And you'll be receiving a follow-up email with the lesson plan, with a PDF of the slide deck and this recording, so that you can come back to it. We've also just started to create a certificate of participation. So Katie is going to put that in the chat, and we can send this to everyone that has been in attendance here. But this is a certificate if you want to download that, and then we'll follow up with some of these certificates for you to have ongoing record of your participation here. So here's one for today, and we'll catch up with module 1 for the ambassadors, and we'll be issuing these moving forward. And of course, we'll see you on Slack for the ambassadors. We'll see everyone on Facebook. And if there's no other questions, I think that was my last slide. What is next in the deck? Okay, so any other questions or comments or any other follow-up before we sign off?
Thank you, everyone. You're so inspiring, and I was so grateful to share this space with you.
Thank you, Veronica. It's so wonderful to see you. Veronica and I know each other through the art museum world as well. So it's always nice to see her here on Zoom and to see everyone. Thank you. So we're going to do an unmute all so we could do a collective goodbye and hear everyone's voice. And we can just say goodbye, and we will see you online again soon.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
I love it.
Bye. Thank you.